Hello everyone, it's Lindsay, and today I'm still working through the March Faith Art box from Creative Retreat Kits. I was going to journal the Matthew verses that are in there, but I think I already had some already journaled, so I'm going to hop on over to Mark. It's the same story or same series of passages, just in another book of the Gospels. And I'm going to be recreating that pattern that's on the back of the devotional content. So I have pulled out a whole bunch of older Creative Retreat Kits stamp sets. These are still available, so I will link them down below for you guys. And I've also pulled out 3 different colors of Distress Oxide inks, and we'll be stamping with those. And they were colors that closely match the colors in the kit this month. So to begin with, because Distress Oxide inks bleed through the pages, I'm going to prep with some white acrylic paint. So I'm just taking a paintbrush and just brushing on a thin layer of the paint, and I'm sticking to the margin of the page. That way I can just have more control, don't have to worry about covering the text. I do go ahead and apply 2 layers of this white paint and drying in between the layers, and then this will prevent any bleed through from the Distress Oxide inks. So I'll go ahead and dry in between those layers, and I am working in Mark chapter 16 and part of 15. It's just the whole series of passages talking about Jesus's crucifixion and his resurrection and all that goodness. So not any one particular verse, just that entire passage. And before I start stamping, I am going to lay down some washi tape. You can see I stuck it to my hand first just to remove some of the stickiness, and then I'm going to kind of mask off an area. That way my stamping just stays in the margin and it doesn't cover the text. And I can take that tape off at the end, and that way all my stamping will be masked off. So I'm trying to get an idea of how I want this to look. I kind of fiddled with this quite a bit, but to begin with, I'm going to sponge on some peeled paint, Distress Oxide ink, towards the bottom to make kind of a little grassy hill area. Now, Distress Oxide inks are very smooth to blend, but because I'm blending over the acrylic paint that I applied with a paintbrush, it's going to pick up all that texture that was in that paint. So if you just sponge this onto a regular dry Bible page with no page prep, it's really smooth, blends really well, but blending on this, you get some texture, but that's okay. It just adds some interest to the grass down there. I'm just creating kind of a little hillside. Then I can stick those 3 cross stickers. I love that those were included this month. So they were a little bit different than the typical cross shapes that we get in the kits. And so you could kind of recreate this cross scene that's so iconic when we think of Easter and the crucifixion and resurrection and all that. This is kind of what we have in our minds usually, is this picture of 3 crosses up on the hill. So I went ahead and kind of recreated that. And then I'll take some of the word fetty from the kit, and I'm going to spell out "My Redeemer Lives." At this point, I'm just trying to use up as many of the stickers as I can, and there's room to journal on this entry when I'm done, but I didn't do any journaling. I've journaled these passages several times. I did some journaling in other areas of my Bible, so I was just trying to get some words down on the page without just going in and doing regular journaling like I usually do. Here I'm going to stamp out "He is Risen," and I'll be using some StazOn ink. Since I'm stamping over the top of acrylic paint, I do want to use a permanent ink like StazOn. But you do want to clean your stamps right away. And this is a sticky ink that's permanent, and it dries really quickly. So you can see just in my indecision time, I didn't get a good impression. So I did go over the top of it and stamp a second time, and I got a good impression that time. And then I'll just go through and stamp some of the different florals and leaves and flowers and things like that in the background and kind of create a pattern. You'll see that here in a minute. But while I'm doing that, let's talk about the verses. So I guess I'm specifically looking at chapter 16, verses 1 through 8. It says, "When the Sabbath was past, Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James, and Salome bought spices so that they might go and anoint him." And that's talking about Jesus. "And very early on the first day of the week, when the sun had risen, they went to the tomb. And they were saying to one another, 'Who will roll away the stone for us from the entrance of the tomb?' And looking up, they saw that the stone had been rolled back. It was very large. And entering the tomb, they saw a young man sitting on the right side, dressed in a white robe, and they were alarmed. And he said to them, "Do not be alarmed. You seek Jesus of Nazareth, who was crucified. He has risen. He is not here. See the place where they laid him. But go tell his disciples and Peter that he is going before you to Galilee. There you will see him just as he told you." And they went out and fled from the tomb, for trembling and astonishment had seized them, and they said nothing to anyone, for they were afraid. So here we can see where, the ladies come to the tomb and Jesus is no longer there. There's an angel there telling them that Jesus has risen and left. In my blog post for this entry over at Creative Retreat Kits, be sure to head on over and check that out. I talk about, during the week that I was working on this page, I also watched the movie A Case for Christ, which is the story of Lee Strobel, and he was atheist journalist, and he decided to prove that Christianity was false through his journalism tactics after his wife became a Christian. And through his research trying to disprove Christianity, he actually himself became a believer. And so to disprove, he really went to studying Jesus's crucifixion and resurrection, trying to disprove that, and didn't disprove it. He became a believer, but it was very, very interesting to look at all the facts and some of the little details surrounding those events. I mean, more than you could even imagine. So I would encourage you to get that movie. They have it on Amazon Prime. Check it out. It was really, really interesting, especially as we're working through this kit, because it really focuses in on the same time and the same events. So on screen here, I've taken a clear epoxy sticker and adhered it over the top of that He is Risen sticker just to give it some dimension, and created a tab out of it. I've used those in the past to create little tabs with paper clips and things, and so it was perfect for adding some dimension. I can use my EK6S powder tool to brush over the back of the stickiness that's exposed, and that way I have that little tab there. And I had outlined the stickers, and that was it for my entry today. Super simple. Be sure to go on over to the blog, check out my blog post, as well as the post from the other ladies, and see how they've been working on the kit this month. Subscribe to this channel if you're not already subscribed. Click the like button if you enjoyed this video, and until next time, thank you so much. Bye-bye.